Go speak it.
Gets are on.
It's a different place when you're just like.
It's apart from my family.
That's right. That's what I mean. Whereas when you're an algo, people are actually.
Yeah, that's right.
Last year, a presentation from Zach Diet, Sister Diet.
So we're live, everybody.
Tells you two TV shows. He's fucking good.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Ordinary Council meeting being held at AND Tuesday, the 27th of May at 7 p.m. I'd like to start with the Kaurna acknowledgement. The City of Prospect acknowledges that we are on the traditional country of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains region, and we pay our respects to elders past and present. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationships with the land, and we acknowledge that they are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today. And now the Council Pledge. We seek wisdom and understanding as we face the duties of our united task, praying for the peace and prosperity of our city. Thank you. Okay, item 2 on the agenda, on leave, we have nil. Item 3, apologies, there are nil. Item 4, an indication of intention to declare a conflict of interest. Does anyone intend to declare a conflict of interest for any items on the agenda tonight? I'm getting nothing, so I'll take that as a no. Item 5 on the agenda, confirmation of minutes from the meeting held on the 29th of April. Do I have a mover? Councillor Group, would you like to speak to? Do I have a seconder? I had a tie. Let's do it again. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Nguyen, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you.
There's probably not any need for discussion unless anyone wants to, and there's probably no need for a summary. I'll look forward to those, though, that say that for another item. Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour, against, carried unanimously. Public question time. So questions from members of the public. So we've got up to 15 minutes and we can take up to 5 questions. If anyone from the floor, and thank you for all coming tonight, has a question, they can raise their hand and we'll invite you forward. You can ask a question and it may or may not be answered depending on if we have the answer at hand. So are there any questions from members of the public? I'm not getting anything, so we will move on. Item 7, petitions, there are nil. Item 8, deputations, there are nil. Item 9, questions without notice. Are there any questions without notice? No. Okay. Moving on to item 10, reports for decision. There has been a request to bring forward item 11.4, which is the Prospect Lifestyle Precinct Phase 2 Community Consultation Report. Could I please have a show of hands to indicate that people are, in general, happy to bring that item forward? So we will bring that item forward for discussion now. So I'm also going to seek leave of the meeting to suspend meeting procedures for 30 minutes to give us an opportunity to discuss any aspects of this. If we don't need that 30 minutes, then we'll go back into formal session. Could I have a show of hands that people are happy to suspend meeting procedures for up to 30 minutes, which takes us through to 7:33. Okay, so an opportunity for any elected members to ask for clarification or even provide an opinion on the report that the staff have put together. A very comprehensive report. We've seen a lot of that data together, but it's great to have it available now, and I think it's a really important decision-making tool. So, has anyone got any questions? Councillor Backer.
Oh yeah, look, thank you for the opportunity to bring this forward. Just a first question, I did get asked in the break there. On the report, it says for the City of Prospect. I'm just wondering who wrote the report and why the details aren't on the report themselves.
CEO.
Mr. Pearce.
Yeah, for the CEO, the report at the back was co-authored by our strategic project manager, Stacey Mills, with Natasha Holmes from Holmes Hire. So they were co-authors and basically wrote pulled the results together and wrote the report.
Thank you for that information. Yeah, look, I you can see the gallery tonight. This is, I guess, this is for noting, so maybe just for the members of the gallery. My understanding is that this is for noting. So noting is just to receive information, so it's not to be for or against it, that kind of thing.
Yep.
But certainly, there's quite comprehensive information, and there's certainly some, in some of the summaries, I guess the way that the cohorts, I think was the wording used, seem to be like a negative thing. And I think what I'm really encouraged by is the huge participation in this report. So if we reflect on our community plan, and we had a great strategic engagement report by URPS, who had their details on it and everything like that. And again, we did lots of different types. We did dots and talking to people and online feedback. And I think in the report for PLP, it's sort of highlighted in bold, only had 1%. Now, in the strategic plan report, we had 7 online responses and 1 letter. We had 212 online responses and many letters, which was an increase, I think, I calculated of 2,000% increase of online responses. So though some of the messages are different to maybe other elected members around I think it's really good that we have an engaged community, and I think that should really be reflected in the report. And I think one of the other things about the report is maybe there's some feedback there in process, rightly or wrongly, but one of the questions I'll maybe ask, maybe again through the chair, it didn't come out in the report, could we have done it better? And if we had more money or more staff, what could we have done better? So maybe that's a question.
Thanks for the question. I'll have a go at answering, and then maybe the CEO might like to as well. I think it'd be useful to have a retrospective once we get through the next stage, which is the tabling of the master plan for adoption at the next meeting. I don't know what that looks like, but it would be typical to complete a project of any significance with a retrospective to help us synthesise what worked, what didn't work, what we should have done, what we shouldn't have done, and how we can feed that back into our processes in the future. So I think it's a great suggestion. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Because I think the CEO's heard that there's a bit of an appetite for such a thing, and there may well be a plan in place already to undertake such an exercise. CEO.
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd almost echo everything you said, word for word, other than to add the fact that whilst we have every intention to do that, right now we are focused on getting this master plan to council in June. So it's not something we plan to do in the next couple of weeks, but it will absolutely be done.
Thank you. Is that?
Yeah, look, and I think it's good, and obviously, the community consultation is one part of it, and the facility user group, community reference group, and wider consultation we've been doing in the community. But certainly, I think if we reflect back to the phase 1 consultation, it was very clearly green open space, and I think there seems to be a conflation between the terms open space in the report and green space. So I'd really like to see when the master plan comes back to us, and I think the community would as well, because a concrete concourse around an oval could be deemed open space, but you can't plant a tree in it, and it doesn't take away the heat effect. So we've got great tennis courts that are open space, but they're not grass. So I think we really need to define what green space is, and we need to define what open space is, so we're not losing green space, because that's certainly in the phase 1 of the consultation came through really strongly. And I'd like to see that continuation from phase 1 through into the master plan.
I think it's a good point. I think we've learned a lot out of this process that we can carry forward with us in future. There won't be something similar, I was going to say future similar, but in future engagements. Anybody else have any questions around the content
Just
of the
on
report?
Councillor DeBacker's point there, you know, you've got your green space, different types of green space, but it's, you know, you've also got what is restricted green space and what is just available to residents at all times. So I know that, you know, there are some places, I mean, if you look at that last option we have, you've got more space there, but it's not necessarily available to everyone all the time. So, and that applies to what we're built, you know, what will be built there as well. So I think that's important to emphasise in future as well, what will be available to residents, you know, all hours or minimal hours, particularly with the green space. And we do know, for example, the croquet club, can't always be used by the public. So you've got green space there, but it's not always available green space.
Thank you, Councillor Holler. Any more questions around the content of the report? Any aspects that people require further clarification or would like to express a view about? I'll go back to you, Councillor Becker, then I'll go to Councillor Barnett.
Probably just one more thing that's brought up in some of the comments is still, you know, the whole title is State Heritage Listed, and we haven't done a heritage survey. And I guess there's a bit of angst around the fact that are we doing the planning before doing the heritage survey? And is there a reason why we're not doing that first before a master plan comes back to us? Because obviously some of the master plans look at, you know, being in that space, and certainly with the planning as an established neighbourhood zone and a heritage place over that precinct. I'm just wondering, is there any thought to maybe deferring the process so we get it right after a heritage survey? Or would that come by way of motion, say?
I think the question may be to the CEO, is there a plan in the not too distant future to undertake a heritage survey? Maybe not before June council meeting, but at some point in time, not too far past that. Is that part of our plan at this point in time, or is that something that we need to activate?
Mr. Prince, are you able to answer that one for us, please?
Yeah, sure. Look, through the chair, the high-level response re the heritage review is that yes, the heritage review is an overlay. It really has to do with the fact that part of the memorial arches, the air raid shelter, and part of the grandstand are on the register. A heritage review will indeed be done once the master plan is endorsed and we enter detailed design on what will be visionised on site, and in parallel with that, the heritage review, which has been budgeted for in the draft budget for 25-26, will be undertaken during that phase as part of the roadmap. It was always in that phase as part of the roadmap because it makes sense to undertake the heritage review and be specific about it in terms of detailed design in certain places, rather than right now have nothing to really go by. So that's the reason for it, is to be efficient with the review.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor?
It's just an opinion. I think the heritage survey should come first, because it would be terrible to get some surprises that we haven't considered something where we've got you know, structure. But you know, that's a matter for debate with the council.
Certainly, thank you. Councillor Barnett?
Yes, I think Elizabeth starting the office it's all about gathering information, gathering opinions. Now, the opinions might be focused, on a particular group or that, and that's fine. But I just realised that many of the comments come up twice now. There's one particular one that people are talking about opinions. And I just wonder how many people that make comments like, oh, well, the RSL doesn't need a building, it can go into the air raid shelter. If they've never been into the RSL hall, if they've never been, into the air raid shelter. I mean, the RSL club started off, 1921 in rooms under the grandstand, all right, until they built up and fundraised enough and built their own, the Hall of Memories it's called, building. But as with many of our old things, getting past its use by date. The floor needs, whole wooden floor needs replacing, all these sorts of things. And you cannot, in the air raid shelter, which is one of our very few you can count on your hand state heritage items, it's what it is. It's a concrete bunker. It doesn't have toilets. It doesn't, except there are some toilets nearby, but just not suitable for, people to meet in. I think we can cast a lot of all the comments and the feedback. You can then start putting an overview on a lot of all of these comments and say, well, what is reality? I mean, it's fairly visible for the cricket club when you see the huge cracks. You see that if you're in a wheelchair or infirm, you cannot even access up the stairs and the ramp. So I think this is where at council we're in the process of gathering all this information, sifting through it, and you can, start to see where some of the flavours sort of are and whatever. So it's an exercise in gathering that we're going through, and we've certainly been, I think, doing that, and using a lot of different, as many as we can, avenues, to get people engaged. And because obviously if something's right on your doorstep, I think you're going to have far more concerns, or what you want to see, your lifestyle might be sort of upset, and all the rest of it, compared with somebody that might live way on the western side or way on the the fringes of our city. So it's just and I guess, I think I said it before, I haven't seen any really big idea. Nothing has really excited me tremendously yet. I'm still waiting for that to happen. So I just want, to maybe getting that message through that nothing's set in stone. We're gathering. And perhaps it may be that, some other residents or even people outside the city that had a comment, have been learning some things also about that particular part of our world. I think that's all that I need to say. And just thank everybody who's participated in phase 1 and phase 2. We're still going.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Any other questions or points anyone would like to make? We've been over this a fair bit. Yes, the only thing I would say is that apart from the formal consultation, this has really provoked and prompted a lot of conversations that I'm sure we've all had with people in the street, people at the shopping centre, people at the footy, and everyone's interested to hear about it. Everyone's got their own views, but I think it's done a great job of bringing this to the surface and getting the whole process well known. So I think that's a great byproduct. If there's no more questions, I'll just close by confirming for those of the people who are in the gallery that the next step in the process is that at the June council meeting there'll be a master plan put forward for consideration and potentially adoption by the elected member group, and that's really all we've got at the moment. The details of that master plan option, unless I'm wrong, CEO, will be in the next set of papers, which will be published on the Thursday before the council meeting.
That's the plan.
That's the plan. So there'll be a reasonable amount of detail there, and it will be on the floor for discussion and debate at that council meeting. And we don't know whether a decision will be made because that's really up to what happens on the night. But just so that it's simple enough for you guys to follow, that's exactly the process, and you will have as much opportunity as we have to review that and come and join us in a month's time. It'd be great to see a full gallery as well, and I'm sure there'll be some interesting debate. I think Robin is putting to a watch saying what time. So
Date.
24th of June is the council meeting, and we expect the agenda to be released on the afternoon of the 19th of June. At the latest, it'll be the 20th.
meeting will start at 7, and it's fairly likely that if this is not the first item on the agenda, it may be requested of me to pull it forward. So thanks for coming tonight. If you're here for this discussion, then that's the end of this discussion. Of course, you're welcome to stay for the whole meeting, but if not, thanks for coming. Let's go back into formal session at 7:19, and I'm looking for a mover for report 11.4. Councillor Backer would like to speak to the report.
Yeah, look, just briefly, I'm going to get it on the floor. It's good to ask the community, and I do value their opinion, and I think we all value opinions, and there are different opinions in the community. So, you know, obviously, we're a very small council, and we're trying to do big things, and we have to look at different ways of doing things. I'd encourage people to come along to the next council meeting. But you have to remember as well, I suppose, fellow elected members, all we put out in the public realm are basically boxes on a plan. We actually haven't put out the 3D or any renders, and maybe that's just a question through to the Mayor. Do you know what form that will be? Will it be 3D renders, or will it be boxes to show heights, or how is it going to be demonstrated?
I'll direct that question to CEO. Sorry.
Mr. Pearce, hard for you to imagine a document that doesn't exist yet, but what are your thoughts in that regard?
Yeah, look, through the Mayor, ultimately we've tested some of the bulk and scale and heights and so on in the design workshops. That's just to help members imagine what possibly could be an option in any element. This particular stage coming up in a month's time is endorsement of the master plan, so it'll be very much 2D blocks of the page. The next phase, phase 2 in next year, starts to address things like detailed design and imagining through things like code amendment processes and revocation processes what could potentially be built into the future, which involves that other detail that Councillor Tobacco just mentioned. But for the purposes of a master plan, it's a master plan only at this stage for the next council meeting endorsement, subject to consultation with our team.
So just further to that, and I think, look, for those in the gallery that weren't there, we did have a concept design, not endorsed by council, presented to us, and obviously that kind of visual does two things. One, it engages people that haven't been engaged before, because if we're showing boxes on a plan, people still don't get it. Not everyone has a 3D mind, but if that box represents 8 stories, I think we should really put that in the public realm. We shouldn't be afraid of actually modelling 8 stories if that's what the intent is. Because I think by not doing that, we're kind of like, you know, I'm really about correct, effective communication. So is it something that could be considered from, I suppose, a communications perspective? If we're going to do that, are we going to have that in the public realm?
CEO.
There is danger in putting this out there because let me remind members that the master plan process is a trigger for a raft of other processes that will then deliver a density outcome. In particular, a code amendment process, and a land revocation process, both of which require their own consultation efforts, which must, by virtue of whatever density council happens to seek at the time or building height, include that sort of information. I would argue that putting that out there at this point may be putting the cart before the horse. I understand the desire maybe to have that conversation now, but that presupposes an outcome in that code amendment process that we haven't even applied for yet. Mr. Pearce, is there anything you would add to that?
Look, through you, CEO, through the Mayor. The only thing I'd add is that if there's a request by members or a desire to incorporate some of what has been imagined as part of the master plan, separate to the master plan, but in addition to the document, we can certainly put those things in the document to be adopted. But it would have to be separate from the master plan per se, and we would have to be very clear that these things are, what could be imagined on the site and not what we're asking to be endorsed as the master plan itself.
I get that, and I guess what I'm saying, and that we're talking to the community. So massing models, I think, are very helpful because they're a bit non-specific, but certainly having a bit of dimension to them. Because the last thing I want to do is make a decision on something that implies something that's a blob on a page, as an eagle looks at it. But 4 months down the way, we release concept design, and the people of our community have no idea. So I think for elected members around the table, if you're in support of that kind of thing, be brave and put it out there, at least the massing models, because at least the community is aware of what that actually represents. It might not be the build form or the concept design, but I think that would be a better way of communicating, but ultimately it's up to the administration and how it comes back to us.
Yep, I'll take that as a comment. Thank you. Anything else in your meeting? I'll now call for seconder. Councillor Green, would you like to speak to that?
I will just briefly start by just saying thank you to John and team. There's a huge amount of data in here, and I think it does reflect a couple of things in my mind. One is that we're never going to please all people all the time. I think that's council life in general. But there are people in here very supportive of what we're doing. There are people in here not supportive of what we're doing, and our job in 4 weeks' time in this chamber will be to weigh that up. I just have a brief question around the number of participants. I'm just trying to reconcile table 3 in the report, sorry, in the paper, and table 2. So page 175 of the agenda. So in table 2, participant number talks about in-person engagement hub and written, total 735. Then in table 3, it talks about engagement hub participation, and it looks like there's 218 unique respondents. I'm just trying to check how many people actually responded to this consultation. Is it the 218 or is it 735?
Theo.
Mr. Pearce?
Yeah, look, I wish we could answer that specifically ourselves. The 218 relates to the pieces of response on the, or the amount of people that's the individual responses on Engagement Hub.
Yeah.
The other body of responses is the other pieces of data that were collected, or the balance of that number are the data that were collected through comments, phone calls.
Okay, thank you. So what I was trying to do is work out how statistically significant the 0.94% of the, which is the percentage of the residents within the City of Prospect who actually responded to the consultation. So I was just kind of doing a bit of backwards thinking and looking back to the representation review we did in August 2012. In 6 weeks we had 303 written submissions received by council. They were unique written submissions in 6 weeks. So it reflected an issue that was citywide. Everyone had a view on it at the time. For those of you around the table at the time, we were getting lots of feedback. I do reflect on some of the statements in here around the very localised nature of the consultation, that people who live on Kintore and Flora and Wilcox are more affected than people living on Regency and Braun and Galway. So I think it's just from a residential perspective. So I think that's, we have to weigh all that up, and I think it's just worth kind of articulating that that's something that we need to consider. Because in itself, 218, if you kind of drill down, 141 residents, adjacent 41, that kind of leaves, well, 77 non-residents, that leaves less than 100 people who actually made comment on this. from the engagement hub point of view, not in relation to the other one. So we'll take that with a pinch of salt. Anyway, the only other thing I want to mention was Councillor Becker's point about the heritage overlay, because that is on my mind, and I think it'd be really embarrassing. I'm not suggesting this is going to happen, but we approve this, and in 6 months' time we do a heritage overlay. It shows we can do nothing, and I think that would be not a good situation for council to be in. So probably in the next 4 weeks, I'm looking forward to some convincing as to why we could approve a master plan absent a heritage study, or whether we need to look at it in a different way. So I think, if nothing else, that probably should be in the report that we see next month. But I think it's a reasonable point to be raised. Apart from that, again, I think it's a good consultation process. I don't think we could be more thorough. I think this is probably one of the more thorough pieces of work. I think back to the representation review in 2012, we did very little more than a couple of town hall meetings and a bit of publication back then in the Messenger. So. And got quite a good response. So it just shows me the interest that people have in this project versus something that's got a more citywide effect. Probably can't say the same thing for the budget consultation. The same logic doesn't ring true to that. But yeah, well done, great report, and yeah, we'll see what happens next month.
Thank you, Councillor Grote. Any further discussion, any points that haven't already been raised? If not, I'll head back to Councillor De Backer to sum up.
Yeah, just echoing the points. It's a lot of work, and obviously, you know, we've got a small team, and it's good to be canvassing different elements of our community. And I look forward to ask a cheeky question: the FUG report and the CRG report. So I'm imagining some of this information is going to them. Will that come back to next council meeting, like the consultation?
There's a CRG meeting next Monday. I haven't checked out the agenda as of yet. Are you suggesting that you'd be looking for feedback from both the FUG and the CRG to come back to the elected member group ahead of the next meeting, such that we're fully informed?
Yeah.
I'll have to ask the CEO that question.
Through the mayor, my understanding is we covered that in the workshops. Mr. Pearce, maybe do you have any thoughts in terms of whether there's any further reporting expected to council before the master plan from the FUG and CRG?
Is through the mayor, there is not another report coming as a result of the CRG and FUG to come. However, the minutes of both of those will be recorded on the council website. And to be perfectly honest, we can insert a summary of the general theme and feedback and tone of those meetings into the final report anyway that comes with the master plan in June.
I do re-emphasise that the CRG and the FUG's views were discussed in some detail in the workshops.
But with respect, this is for public transparency. So I guess more the fact that having it on either on the, they might be on the engagement hub, but the engagement hub doesn't look like it's been updated for a while. So it was more just, you know, because people do ask, oh, you know, the CRG group and the FUG group, if the minutes are there, and that might be where they are. So just if we could be alerted ahead of the next council meeting, so then people in the public as well.
Thank you.
But, so encourage people to support noting the report.
Thank you, Councillor De Backer. Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. As mentioned, that's the discussion relating to the PLP for tonight's agenda. You're welcome to stick around for the rest of the meeting, but there's nothing else on the agenda that relates to that project. We'll now head back to item 10 on the agenda, reports for decision. 10.1, the Eastern Health Authority draft annual business plan and budget recommendations on page 4. Do I have a mover? Councillor Barnett, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I think the positive news is that our Prospect Council contribution is a 2.4% decrease, so minus $5,969. So it's not quite often we get things coming to us where we pay less than what we did, you know, previously. But that is attributed really because as a small council we have less things serviced by the Eastern Health Authority. They still do all the things that we as a council need to have done, but we don't have as many restaurants and cafes as some of the bigger councils in our region, or council owned swimming pools and things like that. So anyway, I give the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Nguyen would you like to speak to the motion.
Yes, so yeah, there was a few improvements in this annual plan, business annual plan. Councillor Barnett and I sit on the committee, and yeah, it's great to see the work that they're doing. There's like increase like training programs for like certain health, beauty services. So there's like new programs for those specific areas. So that's really great to see. And there was something else I was going to mention, but I can't find it. I support the recommendation also.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Sorry.
Yes.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any further discussion, any points that haven't been covered already, Councillor De Back?
Yeah, look, I did note with interest beauty was covered and injectables. Is that, just a question, is that a new sort of area of interest for Eastern Health Authority?
CEO, you'd be across injectables.
I hate to say it, staff are not on the, maybe our community
I
members.
didn't hear what the question was.
Yeah,
sorry, through the mayor.
it is new. It's something that
Injectables as something which is of interest to EHA.
Yes, well, certainly if it pierces the skin, we're interested.
Sorry. I'm queasy, so.
Imaginations. Sorry.
Look, it's a, I think it's really important that we know a bit more information about it. We do have a lot of beauty salons in the area. I don't know if it includes tattoo parlours and.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so is there going to be a public register? And is that council's responsibility or is it EHA's responsibility for?
CEO, sounds like.
Through the mayor. Yes, Eastern Health Authority is the legal authority set up on behalf of its member councils, of which City of Prospect is a member.
Okay.
Thank you.
But anyway, I just think it would be really exciting thing to maybe do, some training here in Paisley. We've got a lot of beauty businesses in the area, and I'm sure it would be of interest to our trades.
Thank you, Councillor Backer. Any
Take
further?
that back.
Sorry?
So we'll take that back.
Councillor Nguyen.
Just under the focus area 2025-26 priorities, maybe just a comment from me and Deputy Mayor and Councillor Barnett to bring back to them. Food safety, like they're wanting to do, events and posters and face-to-face information stores. I'd love for it to be for them to consider targeting or reaching out to cold communities or having the information in other languages, so it could be a bit more specific. Maybe that could be, to reach out to those communities where implying that everybody will, speak English or all the materials will be in English. So just a suggestion for you to bring back to them.
Through the mayor, there are translated materials. I think if you go on the website, the website, particularly for immunisation from memory.
Thank you, Councillor Nguyen. If there's no further discussion, I'll circle back to Councillor Barnett to sum up.
No, I just thank the questions, right, and move the motion.
Thank you. Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Item 10.2, East Place Draft 2025-2026 Annual Business Plan and Budget. Recommendations on page 41. Do I have a mover? Councillor Nelson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Sure, why not? Short, sharp and sweet. I think it's actually a pretty good report. Very well, solid plan looks well structured, well thought through. I think the movement, the processing fee from council back to East Waste is actually a very good idea. I assume it's happening with all councils. I think it's a very good initiative from East Waste to do that, and happy to support it.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Burnett, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, again, very informative, and I think also noting, a bit similar to the Eastern Health Authority, that we have a decrease in cost by, if I can get my scribble here, I think it's $51,156. So again, two, I think, good stories of whereby we're instead of the charges usually going up, they're going down.
Thanks, Councillor Burnett. Any further discussion, any points that haven't already been covered? If not, Councillor Nelson, would you like to sum up?
Enough been said, I think.
Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Next item on the agenda, item 10.3, fees and charges. There are recommendations on page 63. Do I have a mover? Deputy Mayor Wynne, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, I'm happy with what's been recommended there. I do have a question though. Am I allowed to ask a question?
You can ask a question.
I remember speaking about the mattress fee, and I just want to clarify that one there. So there is hard waste collection, and the mattresses together, and it says that the third is thing we have to pay. Is that for both the hard waste and the mattress? I just want to clarify that. It's a bit confusing, I think, the way it was put together.
CEO.
Mr. Delena or Ms. Batty?
On page 71.
Mr. Delena?
Question one is council has through the journey to look at the budget, one of things to decide on tonight is whether it reduces its waste collections from 3 to 2. But we have incorporated a fee to enable the third collection to still occur. So $60 if there was a third collection from an individual property, they could still do that at a fee. In terms of the mattress collection fee, there is a fee for a secondary mattress collection. It's incorporated. I'm just trying to find the page. So, yeah,
Page 71.
Page 71, is it?
Mm-hmm. So it says mattress ensemble base co-contribution payment $28 per mattress. So we don't get
$60 per booking.
Sorry, I'll just clarify my statement. For a mattress, there is a co-contribution for a mattress and ensemble.
and or ensemble. So together.
So effectively, they're individual items.
Individual items.
They're not seen as one item.
Yeah.
So effectively, ensemble is effectively a mattress.
So there's no free one at all, or so there's a charge always. There's no free mattress from
Temporary mattress.
Yes, so there was a report presented, I think in the lead up to the last budget that talked to this particular issue.
Yeah.
And then so this was implemented in the 2025 budget.
I thought we had free mattress and then we had to pay for the second. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, Deputy Mayor? Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Stanton, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I'll second it. Also speak to it on that particular hard waste collection. I had a look at the mattress price there. So mattress, we're assuming now that we get no free mattress collection, and per mattress is $28. Is that what we just? Was that the clarification just a moment ago?
Let's see.
Mr. Leno?
Yep. So I had a look at how much it would cost us if we had to actually get rid of a mattress in the general market, and to get rid of a mattress on Research Road facility is a single mattress is $42 and a double mattress or ensemble base is $46. So $28 is pretty much half the price and someone will come and pick it up. We don't have to put it in a trailer or drive it down there. I think that's fair. I think that's, if we are going to charge, I think it's a fair amount to charge. I think one of the best things we've done is the third hard waste collection is charged. So I wasn't happy with getting rid of the third collection, but if we have to get rid of it, at least give people the opportunity to have a third collection. And I think what this will do will weed out those people that were using the third collection a little bit frivolously, whether they were, you know, just using it, if they were a landlord and just kind of dumping it all on us. But it does give the opportunity for people who genuinely need a third collection per year to actually have one, albeit to pay $60. Which once again, if I go to the open market on, what do we call it? We'll call it a cage trailer. It's about a cubic metre. So cage trailer, 6x4 trailer is $113. So it's about half the price, and you don't have to haul it anywhere. You just put it out the front of the house and away you go. So I think it's actually a pretty good compromise. I think we've done well in this space. We have retained a third collection. You just have to pay for it, and the price you're paying is about half the going rate if you had to take it to a waste facility. So I think it's a good outcome, and I think it's a good compromise. So I'm pretty happy with that.
Thank you, Councillor Stanton. Any further discussion? Any points that haven't been raised? I've got Councillor Green and Councillor Nelson.
Thank you. Just two very brief questions. The Nailsworth Community Shed hire $30 per hour. I just want to check, has any work been done to ascertain whether there's demand to hire that community shed at $30 an hour?
CEO. Taylor, you have a take on?
Through the chair, so we have had an expression of interest out on the website seeking, inviting people to kind of contact us with relation to whether they wish to hire the space or use the space.
We're still working with, I guess, local community groups at this point to get a gauge of interest and to build that awareness of the space. So it has been few and far between at this point, but along with the official opening, we believe it's a fair and reasonable sort of price guide at this point, which should be reviewed.
And I should probably add to that, it's not the model that we're currently working with is not suggesting that it would be a completely hireable facility. It's one that we're activating ourselves through a program that doing that, but we felt that it was important to put something into fees and charges this year so that if through the year we're approached by a group that have something that is appropriate for the space, that we have a price guide there that we can actually refer to.
Look, I think the more spaces we can activate, the better, so that's great. Second question was in relation to the community facilities hire out of our telephone support fee of $90. I'm just trying to think through that practically. So I'm hiring a facility, the key snaps in the lock, I can't undo the building, and I ring you or ring council. Are we charging $40 for that? What's the rationale for charging an out of our support fee? What sort of activities would be charged, I guess is my question.
Yes, Taylor, or is that one?
Definitely go for the manager. Chair, as the person who gets all the calls. So it would be very rarely that we would charge this, but the reason we put this in is because we do frequently get calls where somebody will call because they believe they don't have an access code, for example, and 95% of the time, in my experience, they have received their access code and they forget where to find it, or so it's basically, I guess, putting it in there as a little bit of a deterrent, because we do quite often get those calls where it's almost like, it's easier just to call the after hours than go back into Space to and find our code, but it's certainly not something we would suggest we'd be using for a genuine out of hours issue that requires our action.
Okay, thank you, that's a perfect answer. The last thing I want to ask was something else. What was it? Sorry. Oh no, that's right. The third hard waste collection, the price charge is $60. Without reading through our delegations document in great detail prior to tonight, if I presume there's a delegation there for somebody in the organisation to waive that fee under exceptional circumstances. I won't even try to hazard a guess what they might be, but there might be an exceptional circumstance that somebody says, you know what, I don't think we'll charge it on this occasion as a one-off. Is that a delegation or something that can be delegated or not?
Ms. Medro, do I have the power to waive a $60 fee for a hard waste pickup if I must?
Through the chair, yes, you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't take advantage of that on a regular basis, please.
Exceptional circumstances.
Councillor Nelson and Councillor Nguyen.
It's good to see there's not too many increases, and the increases we do have are minimal and justifiable, which is great. I just have one question, is obviously we're coming up to leases and licensing as well, but I do see on here where we can hire sports grounds and sports facilities, but I don't see anywhere where we have the tennis courts as a service cost on here. Now that we do have the Booker Court and everything else system, wondering why they're not on this fees and charges.
CEO.
Mr. Delena, is that because it's Tennis SA that's managing that, or? Mr. Delena, if you can take the question, please.
Okay. We haven't incorporated a charge because there's no charge as it relates to access to the courts. We're not actively managing the charge. It goes through the club, so we have to typically put club charges through our fees and charges register. Effectively, there is no charge for community access for the times that have been specified.
So, Mr. Delena, what you're saying is, during the community access periods that will be available right now for Prospect Tennis Club, Blair Athol Tennis Club, and hopefully in the future for other tennis clubs.
Prospect for now,
yes.
Basis.
Soon for Blair Athol, and potentially also soon for Broadview.
Yes.
During those periods where they're available for community access, provided they use the Booker Court system, they do not have to pay.
In the times that are outside those times, then there is a fee that the club charge them. It's not a cancel fee.
Okay, I'll save my next question for the leases and licensing. Thanks.
No worries. Councillor Nguyen.
The community bus, is there a huge demand or a high demand for that when it's not used?
Ms. Taylor? Ms. Veronio?
Look, there hasn't been a demand at all for it, and the reason for that was because the fee structure that used to exist in the fees and charges register, as I'm sure the elected members who have been along here for a while know, it was very, basically very unaffordable. Why would you hire the bus from us when you could get a Deathless minibus? So what we've done is actually substantially lowered the fees in this year's. We're proposing that they are lowered. We're going to sort of look to market it a little bit more, but we also need to work around the availability of the bus, which is pretty limited, to be honest, because it is used most weekdays. But we do think there are some opportunities on weekends and maybe 1 or 2 days in the week that there is capacity for it to be hired. So we're hoping that the more reasonable fee structure will allow community groups to be able to then make it an accessible resource.
Any further questions or discussion points? Councillor
I have a
Sanders.
question.
Councillor.
Just a very simple question. The $60 for the third waste pickup, how will that manifest itself? I know that if you go and book online on the East Waste website, it tells you how many you've got left. Will there be something on there saying you've used up your free ones, press this button to book a paid one?
Yeah.
Mr. Delena.
Chair, I have set on notice and go back to this waste and have the process set up that charge. I dare say very much of the process of mattresses currently in place. So that mattress collection fee is currently in place, 27% at $27. So I just don't know the specifics in terms of how we'll be on that. I'll find information separated.
So I can only imagine until that happens, there'll be some sort of grace period, and it'll remain as it is, and everything will be good and dandy.
Possibly.
It'll be like if we start, my expectation start 25, 26, make sure you're over this.
Watch with intent interest.
Councillor Baker.
Yeah, look, I note with interest one of the changes is around planning advice, which is a kind of interesting and contentious one. So I think what was happening is we were giving advice to planning advisors who would then charge their clients for the advice we were giving. So it kind of makes sense to charge for that. I'd be really interested in capturing the number of requests we do get, and once they find out that we charge, that they don't take our advice, Because obviously, 12 months down the line, we might get some perverse outcomes. So even though we are charging for it, it'd be good to know the lost opportunities, the people that ring and don't ask for it, because I think there's certainly an appetite in our community for people that buy into the area to get some advice. I think it's very valuable, but certainly people might want heritage advice, they might want the new Future Living Code amendments coming through, all that kind of thing. And I always think, getting the advice somewhere that is not affiliated with anything, that's kind of neutral, is a really good starting point. I'm just wondering, if we don't go through with the advice, will that information or the demand be captured? That's maybe a question.
See you.
I think we're going to have to take this question on notice because, frankly, whether we can capture that level of detail in our customer relationship management system, because it would be customer service who were taking those calls. Mr. Pearce, Mr. McCluskey, maybe.
Through the chair, can I start by suggesting the examples that were given were all things that wouldn't attract a charge?
Yeah.
So the examples that we're talking about are things like subdivision properties, historic areas, for example, something the council actively doesn't want to see, and the kinds of things that might attract a charge. At present, most of those calls will be taken by our customer service team. So clearly the question of how we data capture people who say no to being passed through my team is part of the administrative triage process that we discussed at that workshop. So my team is currently working on this idea of a 4-question model that our customer service team can convey to people who call us, and that helps us triage whether it attracts a charge or not. I can work with my counterparts in the customer service team around data capture for it. Clearly, when people do make payment, we'll have that data as well.
If there's no further questions, then I'll head back to Deputy Mayor Wynne to sum up.
So I think that's a great, this is great for the community to be able to access and see all the fees and charges, and I commend the recommendation.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Item 10.4, draft community funding sponsorship and donations policy recommendations on page 91. Do I have a mover, Councillor De Backer?
I'd absolutely love to move it. Look, thank you for bringing this to us. I think it's really important to remember that council can't do everything in our community, and we're always short of money to do all the wonderful things we want to do. And it just gives the team some structure about how we go about managing donations and managing expectations as well. There might be times where it's appropriate not to take donations or money or whatever for certain reasons. One of the things with minor administrative changes, the word bequests doesn't appear in bequeaths, which is the verb, but the bequest doesn't. So I would ask the director previously if that could be captured somewhere in the word. Because I think, look, we're living in a society now where less people have children, and we should really maybe look at ways to encourage people to donate to council if we've got some projects that we might want to encourage in the area that people can put their name to. Because I think it's like, for example, Barker Gardens was a donation, and we're very short on open space, and also there's particular things like art studios or whatever that, a new, sound shells, or doesn't have to be the arts, it could be sports or whatever the thing is. But if we don't ask, we don't get, and it'd be really nice to have somewhere even on the website somewhere, because as an elected member, people come up with great ideas in the community, so that's great. Council doesn't have to do it, you could do it. Or that we have a donations policy, if you can pull some sponsorship together, we might be able to help facilitate it, or you can do it privately. It just comes back to the thing of we're a facilitator, and we can do lots of things, but we don't necessarily have to pay for them and run them all ourselves. So I see this as a really good policy for enabling great things to happen in our community, but we don't necessarily have to go to the ratepayer to do them. So I encourage you to support them.
Thank you, Councillor De Backer. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Barnett.
Yes, again, I think it's a very good policy to have, and I'm just wondering whether there could be some examples when, you know, if we promote this, just some examples, you know, like I think I remember one, I used to work at West Torrens Council, and they had a request left to them, and it was for some annual prize. I think, I don't know, it was like student scholarship, you know, things like that. So yeah, I think that just perhaps then puts it a bit more, you know, in front of people, and they sort of could think, oh, yes, you know, that'd be a great thing if I could be, you know, bequeath something to something, you know, like, and like the local heritage, you know, history and things. Yeah.
Thank you. Any further discussion, any points that haven't been made? If not, I'll head back to Councillor De Backer to sum up.
No need.
Thank you very much. Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Item 10.5, Governance Policy Reviews, recommendations on page 102. Do I have a mover? Councillor Nelson would like to speak to the motion.
I mean, with this riveting reading on Sunday, which was good. Look, I didn't see anything too outrageous or anything else. All seems in order. The only question I do have is, I'm curious, and unless I missed it on Sunday, but why are we revoking the social media policy?
I think it mentioned that it's now covered elsewhere, but I'll seek the CEO to clarify.
That is my understanding, but Ms. Amidro is far more qualified to answer this question.
Through the Chair, yes, all of the content's effectively covered under the behavioural management standards that elected members are now bound by. So it was a duplication.
Okay, and we've got an expert. We've got expert to sort of, because obviously we've got two policies there: the other management and the social media. Is everything the social media covered under behavioural standards?
I might ask that be referred further back to the Director of Strategy and Community, because it is her policy.
Ms. Taylor?
That's my understanding. Yeah, so I think particularly around the spokesperson being the mayor for council and that kind of thing, we feel very comfortable that most of that information was sitting under the behavioural standard. Plus, this policy was before Instagram, so it was very, very old, and I felt that the behavioural standards was probably the most effective way to manage what we're going forward.
It just rings alarm bells. It's one of the biggest risks we have in governance now is social media. If you're confident that everything's taken up, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Green.
Look, I'm happy to second. Happy with everything in there. I just had one question in relation to the petition policy, the amendment around signatories only providing suburb, not full address. Now that's consistent with our Code of Practice meeting procedures. My question is, are our Code of Practice meeting procedures consistent with general, I'm going to call it industry norms around petitions? I just find it unusual that we would allow petitioners to put in a suburb, which really provides great exposure to people not living in that suburb to sign the petition. So I'm just curious as to whether it's a standard practice not to include addresses now, or whether we made that agreement as part of our meeting procedure changes outside of what would normally be considered appropriate.
CEO.
Ms. Amidro?
It was included because it was something that was raised by the Chamber for the Code of Practice, so it was put in there as a consistency so that whatever we're asking of people is consistent. It's up to the Chamber to decide whether that's what they want to do or not. There are some petition policies that I have reviewed. Some require no address at all, some only require an email address, some require a physical address. It just depends on what that particular chamber has determined that they want to seek from their petitioners.
Thank you, that makes lots of sense. Is there any state government guidance on the way to receive a petition or the requirements of a legally, it's not binding, is it, but a legal petition?
Ms. Amidro, is there anything in the model policy or anything?
What we have got in the policy comes from the legislation. There is within the meeting regulations, the local government meeting regulations, there is a section on petitions and what petitions need to contain, and what makes them valid petitions.
And we are consistent with that.
And we are consistent with that. We also have the ability through the regulations, there are some bits that we can vary, such as setting things like a minimum number of signatories or determining what we would accept as the address, whether it be an email address or a physical address or a suburb. We have the parameter and the breathing room, so to speak.
My concern was more around consistency with what's expected as opposed to whether we have addresses or not, although probably I would prefer an address, but that's not a big deal really. We can pick that up on the review of the meeting procedures maybe when is that scheduled to be?
Within 12 months of the election, is it not?
It's an annual thing, so we will be looking at it again October, November this year,
Okay.
and then it will be post the election.
Because I will forget between now and October and November, is it possible for administration to make a note of this issue and this conversation for us to just be reminded of looking at that component of meeting procedures?
Addresses for people speaking, public questions and deputations, is that the issue?
Yeah. Well, around petitions primarily, but I think it broadens out to those as well. So, yeah, just because I can almost bet that none of us will remember at that point necessarily. Maybe we will. We will. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's all. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I had a note to bring that up as well. I went online and looked at, well, I think there's probably about 40 councils in South Australia and their petition policy, and not one of them has what we're proposing. I just think that, like for example, just take two of our suburbs, Broadview and Ovingham. Now, Ovingham, part of that's in our council, part in Charles Sturt Council. Broadview, part in our council, and a big part in Port Adelaide Enfield Council. So how are you going to distinguish? You know, if you just ask for a suburb, you can't. I think it's a legal thing, and it should be taken more seriously. And I don't mind if it doesn't contain this the street house number. You know, if people are thinking that's a privacy thing. But if you're going to put your name to a petition, and a petition could be a very serious thing, you know, not just some little small thing that people, you know, want their street tree policy changed or something, or street trees changed. So I think that at least the address, the street name, not necessarily the number, because if you had a street like one of our very small streets, there might perhaps be 4 or 5 people. It might be easier to identify people. But if you're feeling strong enough to put your name to a petition, and one, you know, some of them could be fairly serious ramifications, I think you should be identified. So I'm not happy with just having that part of it as the suburb. Yeah, because I think it needs a bit more of the checking the balance, you know, of having that. So I don't know whether, I mean, if we had a serious petition came that said, oh, to do away, not to go ahead with the precinct that we're, you know, looking at. I mean, that would be a serious thing. It's not beyond the realm of possibility. So you, under this, we pass this tonight, you could be having, you know, 500 petitioners, and they all say they're from Prospect. You know, well, I just think it's just not good enough. So I don't know whether I'm able to move an amendment to test the water and say that it must include the with head petitioner as well, and any of the other petitioners. I may include the address and suburb. So I might just check through the mayor to see what our governance person thinks of.
I think that would be an amendment because it's I think it's significant enough change. So you're welcome to put forward amendment, to move an amendment and seek a
Yes. Is it
seconder.
Is it just amendment or what else we call it?
Well, a variation would
Variation.
be, I think it's an amendment because it's
That's
quite
right.
a,
Substantive change.
I think so, yeah.
All right then, well, I'm happy to move an amendment
Good.
that now I've lost it, sorry. Okay, here we go. That the revised petition policy includes clarification that signatories need to provide an address and suburb, or it's got their full address. So would a full address meet the needs of what I'm trying to do?
Street address. Let's just get some wording up here first, and then you can.
So, Mr. Mayor, I read that as essentially retaining the current wording for the street address and petition policy, and were council to pass this, that's what we would do. We would revert to the original wording, which should be effective, Ms. Mitchell.
Yeah. Okay, that's the way to go then. So it's not an. Is it still an amendment?
Yeah, I'll take that as an amendment. So you're moving an amendment.
Yes. Yes.
So we're looking for a second. You can ask a question. Yeah.
I'll ask a question first, and it might how we shape the amendment. One of the things about full street address and duty of care and things being in the public realm and printing, like on the internet, capturing the address is one thing, but presenting it in a public realm is another. So if we have police amendment, so I'm just wondering if the amender or whatever the correct term is would be minded to use the words capture and then versus print in an agenda, like how we can do that as part of the policy. Well, is it though? I think we should specify it. Okay.
We get
Yeah. Yes, they're not redacted as suspicion.
We haven't done that before.
We used to have them redacted.
No.
All right. So. Yeah, we've got to go with this, and then if you want to move a further amendment after this, then we can. So, I think I had Councillor Standen seconding this amendment.
Can I speak to it?
You can certainly speak to it.
I think I agree with this wholeheartedly. I think if you're going to sign a petition, you need to do it with a bit of gravitas and you need to do it with commitment. And part of that commitment is that you need to reveal, you need to show that you where you live and you have all good interest in the petitions being up. The thing that you get, I think, if you get rid of the name, the addresses, you get. I mean, we don't go through when someone presents a petition. We don't go through and go, "Oh, you had no interest. You had no interest. You were way out." But there is a possibility, to be able. We want to make sure that the people that are putting their names to these petitions have interest in the thing that's happening locally. Petitions are very local things. I think we need to capture the fact that the people signing these are local and have interest. It's the way we've always done it. It's the way petitions have been since year dot, and they've always worked, and I don't think we need to be changing that. Having said that, Councillor De Backer raises an interesting point in this day where things can be captured and scanned and distributed very easily. Maybe there's an amendment that could be foreshadowed that where we once these petitions are captured and presented, maybe there's an amendment we have as a policy, we redact the information going forward.
I believe that the document makes it clear it says, we understand that a petition submitted to the council is a public document.
Okay.
So
that's the way it's always been. And people sign a petition.
I mean,
that's going to be the case.
Yeah, the head petitioner should make you aware of that, and then it's up to you to sign it or not sign it. So, any further discussion?
No, I agree with the fact that the petition there should be full disclosure of people. If they're going to sign a petition, people know that you've signed the petition and who you are.
Yep. Okay. Any further discussion before we put that to the vote, Councillor Barnett?
Yeah, and just following up on that, there's a bit of evidence to that. There was about the ward boundaries, I think it was, or it was about changing the composition of council. But anyway, it was something similar to that. And what happened was that we had, obviously people with very similar handwriting just signing reams and reams and reams of paper. And there are others that didn't provide their full address or a signature, I think was required then as well. And so they were discounted because they hadn't complied with the petition's requirements that you sent it in. At least we're not asking them to put some signature on it as well. Coming up, I think it's reasonable enough, or it is a public document. So I think you have to be committed if you want to sign a petition. I mean, okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Groot.
Just a couple of things. Just on the point around the petition, I've just found a petition from 2022. It's the quickest one I could find. It does say around it being a public document. This one happened to relate to public toilets and was signed by the former member for Adelaide as the first signatory. But I make the point that we received a copy of the full petition. The June 2022 council payment doesn't include the petition in the papers. I do recall maybe a long time ago though we used to be redacted, but I'll stand to be corrected on that. I'm actually not going to support this amendment, which is ironic given I spoke about it earlier, but just because by doing this we now, and I'll check with the appropriate governments in there in a minute, but I think if we approve this, we're then inconsistent with our meeting procedures, or we remain inconsistent with our meeting procedures. Now, it could be argued it's a chicken and egg. It just feels a little bit like policy on the run, which we keep saying we don't do, but we do. So I won't support just on the basis that we're creating another problem for ourselves when we're trying to solve a problem. I'd rather deal with the meeting procedures in a couple of months' time than deal with this, maybe even at the same meeting. And the other issue I was going to say was that we don't get a lot of petitions, so I don't think this isn't time critical. So I think we can wait. So unfortunately I won't support it, but I agree with the principle behind it, just not the timing.
Thank you. Councillor Nelson.
Councillor Groot stole my thunder for a little bit. I can't support this. No, that's okay, it's fine. Only because I do recall we had a robust discussion maybe 12 months ago regarding changing the meeting procedures, where we did sort of review this and look at the privacy and look at the theft of identity and identity theft that goes on around the place, and we took a stance, and from memory it was a unanimous stance, that we were going to stop collecting addresses. So based on that, and yes, we can go and address it again in October, November when we look at the meeting procedures, but based on that and that alone, the fact that we did discuss this 12 months ago, I can't support this motion.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the amendment? Otherwise, I shall put it to the vote. So we're voting on adopting the amendment. In the first instance, all those in favour of adopting the amendment? All those against? The amendment is not adopted, therefore we're reverting back to the original motion, of which we have a mover and a seconder. I haven't got a record of who has or hasn't spoken, but I'm going to... Jason moved, Councillor Groot second. I've got that, yeah. Feels like we've discussed this reasonably, so I'm going to then go back to Councillor Nelson to summarise.
Like you, Mayor, I think we've discussed this enough.
All those, let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? So, all those against? Motion carried.
Oh no!
He's got a 6 o'clock flight to catch tomorrow.
Yeah, I do. We both do.
No time for division.
You guys should book 6 o'clock flights tomorrow. It's going really well.
Don't put the mocker on us.
Division. So I moved on. Item 10.6. the Bottega Gelateria additional space options recommendations on page 140. Do I have a mover? Deputy Mayor Nguyen would like to speak to the motion.
Yes. So, great to see Bottega doing well and needing additional space. And I support the recommendation on utilising the kitchenette area instead of taking up that foyer area and covering that entrance into the wall. And then, yeah, I think I asked this question on to administration about negotiating price for the additional space. So would that be brought back to us at a later time next week?
I believe that part 3 of the recommendation is giving the CEO the delegated authority to negotiate as appropriate. So if this motion is carried, then it won't come back to us for review. It'll be that the CEO can use his judgment and negotiate with the owners.
Yeah, other than that, I would support of the recommendation with the option that sharing the kitchenette area. I think that is a great solution instead of taking up more of the entrance of Eliza Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Can I ask for a seconder for this motion, Councillor Barnett?
Yes, I think it's a common sense solution to it. So I suppose, again, much preferable to have that space in the kitchenette and just redesign that than, as Deputy Mayor said, take up more valuable space that's out near that the venue entrance, the entrance to the hall, Eliza Hall. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Any further discussion? Councillor Groot, then Councillor Nelson and Councillor Baker.
Look, I'll just be very I thought this is a really practical report and it makes a lot of sense. A very good tenant who's managed to make that space work where others haven't been able to as well. I just had two questions. One was covered by the Deputy Mayor in the sense of the financial impact in terms of extra letting space. My other question though was just, why is this coming to us? Is this not something that we delegated to administration?
CEO?
Pretty clear question. Easy answer to this one. It will have an impact on Eliza Hall bookings. So again, in the past, people who booked Eliza Hall automatically get the kitchenette. Very few use it, or if they do, they're not using they're not cooking things in there. They might be warming up some sausage rolls or using it to make a cup of tea.
Yeah.
I, as CEO, am keenly aware and have heard repeatedly from various members around the table the importance of husbanding, maintaining and holding on with white knuckle terror to every square foot of community space we have. This will impact on that. Not a significant impact, arguably, but an impact nonetheless. And members, the commercial arrangements we'll take care of, we'll make sure that they're fair. I certainly won't be accepting terms that I don't feel reflect the loss to the ratepayer or the loss to residents of the community of this portion of the kitchen. But I wanted members to be aware of it. I didn't want members to find out in the CEO update we've already done it. I wanted members to have that opportunity if you had a concern with it. I also wanted to be reassure members that we did look at a range of options here. We really did try, and we had various groups of people with differing interests and different community perspectives in the room having these conversations and walking around the building. So that's why.
Yep, okay. Thank you, it makes sense. I think the impact on community is marginal at best, so I'm really happy to support it. It's a very sensible outcome.
Thank you. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to obviously an opinion. I'm probably going to be the only lone wolf here, but I read this with great interest because when I had a look at it, I mean, obviously for ease of operations, separation between council and the vendor, understanding that both the council and the vendor, this was their preferred option, I found that quite hard to believe, only because the obvious choice in this one would be to expand into the foyer. I get that there's limitations, but the consolidation of the operations would be best suited, would also aid the vendor in their marketing. restrictions on entry and ticketing into Eliza Hall would be very, very limited. And that space there where they're looking at extending is kind of dead space anyway. To move the doorway into Irish Heart would be very, very, very simple. However, I understand that sometimes we do look for an easy out, and this is the easy out. Clearly, it's the cheapest, it's the easiest, it's the fastest, but I don't necessarily believe it's the best. I think it would cause us issues in the longer term during busy periods. If there is an event on at Eliza Hall and they are cooking things in there or they are heating up some pies, there's going to be access issues if that's busy and the Bottega's busy. I'm not going to stand in the way of the motion. I just don't think this is the best option.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor De Backer.
Yeah, just briefly. It is 9B, circulation space, so I think certainly preserving the space in front of the doors. And may I just draw attention to the double doors accessing from Vine Plaza. I witnessed 2 people in electric wheelchair, mouth operated, trying to get in through there, and they couldn't get in because one of the doors was shut. So I think we should need to really look. So if we had an accessible housing conference, for example, and the other door isn't open and this is the main door to the venue, can we please look at automatic doors? That might be a question and might be next. But if we're reconfiguring this anyway and looking at charges and all the rest of it, but also applies to the business. So some electronic sort of opening doors, or at least they can be operated somehow, because at the moment we really need that circulation space. And I know I've seen many a time you've got a little table set up with lanyards and checking people in. So the intrusion into that circulation space is really an issue. And I thank the CEO for bringing it to us, because we do lose the amenity of the kitchenette. So if someone does want to book 50th and the kitchen's being used by a private operator, that is a conflict. And I would argue, if there's ways that we can do it where I know we have to the basement, which is not suitable, arguably there's a plaza out the back there that doesn't get used much at all. Sometimes you use it for pop-up events and things like that. But if you go to Rundle Mall, they've got some fantastic, we lost Le Deux Coq, I think, the one that was the French one, went to the markets. They've now got a pop-up in Rundle Mall. Is there a possibility that they can do like a sister business, or there could be another business that shares some storage facilities as a pop-up venue? I'd just like to think about other ways we could maybe look at storage, activating Vine Street Plaza, and everyone's a winner. And is there a possibility, maybe again the CEO will be delegated, that's maybe yes, we can put the extra stuff in, but I imagine if we put the extra stuff in, it benefits us as well. So if the lease was, say, 12 months instead of 300 years, potentially that could be something that goes to the Eliza Hall, but there could be another option in 2 years' time. Just thinking.
Thank you for those thoughts, Councillor De Backer. If there's no further discussion, there is a Councillor.
Just how satisfactory was this recommendation for the business? Is this? We really wouldn't want to lose them. We probably wouldn't lose them to Prospect, because Prospect loves the ice cream. But we've got some further up the road, so they can't really go there. I imagine they'd stay. But how satisfactory? Have you, just in discussion, did you feel that they were, with this option, or would they like more space? It's just, you wouldn't want to risk them being in a position where they start looking at other options.
Yes, without exposing any commercial
Yeah.
sensitivities, can you give us a sense of how satisfied the tenant may be with this solution?
Yes, certainly through the Mayor. It also gives me an opportunity to declare, as author of the report, on plagiarising it, because Tyson McLean, who used to work here, did a lot of work on this, so I want to acknowledge him. And he also conducted like a range, maybe 6 to 8 different meetings with different stakeholders, many meetings with Bottega to establish a compromise solution. And in fairness, I've also spoken more recently with the tenant Bottega, and the option of the kitchen is actually perfect for them. They, in a perfect world, would have liked a little bit more space than the 2 by 2 metres. Probably would have liked, half the kitchen or maybe even 2/3 of that. But they can live with it, quite comfortable with it, and it really just, I guess you've seen some of their junior staff down there. They're not big staff. The young females is carrying sort of like heavy buckets of ice cream from long distances and those sorts of operational and logistics kinds of things. So it'll fix them and their needs to the end of the lease, and is the right solution probably, or the best worst solution. It's a compromise. There's no doubt about that. But they're certainly very happy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's head back to Deputy Mayor Nguyen to summarise, please.
Yeah, so great discussion. Thank you, Councillor De Backer, for mentioning the access. Yeah, as I said, I do prefer this option than taking away from the entrance and relocating the doors of a community space as well for a commercial business. I'm happy to hear that Bottega are happy with the setup. It gives them an extra space. It's tucked away in the corner, so I'm sure they can work around with the other events that we have going on in the community. So I commend the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Okay, we are now on to reports for information. We can move these en bloc unless anyone wants to pull any of them out, noting that we've already covered 11.4. Item 11.1, I'll pull that out. Would anyone like to pull out 11.2? Councillor De Backer. Would anyone like to pull out 11.3? Councillor Nelson. Looks like there's no on blocking. 11.1, I'd like to move that. Just a couple of things. From an advocacy point of view, we met with Minister Sockarch to talk about PLP, and he was very, I was going to say commendable, but he commended us for the work we've done, the concept. Overall, he felt it was a great example of where local government was keen to consider working with other levels of government to deliver a great outcome. His advice was that if we considered down the track whether there were any code amendments likely, then to make sure that we gave ourselves plenty of time and that we scheduled the full 4 weeks worth of consulting to give everybody as much chance as possible to make comment on that. Apart from that, there were no drawbacks from that point of view. I attended the LGA OGM on Friday. There was a fairly good schedule. There was quite a lot of discussion around AI, and there was also general discussions and presentations on the workforce of the future. So there's always a good bit of info there. The items on the actual OGM itself, all of them were carried almost unanimously, except for some 1 or 2 votes where I think people accidentally pressed the wrong button. There was only one item which was about a 70-30, which was the item relating to community centre funding. There seemed to be a preference to split out research and then on the basis of the research do advocacy on supporting additional funding for community centres. But that did get up. There was quite a few motions that were probably more relevant to regional councils rather than metropolitan councils, which makes sense because there's many more regional councils. And the mayor's dinner on the Thursday night, it was good to catch up with a few mayors, and particularly the ones from the regions who were all aligned with the fact that it was a very difficult time for them and their community. So that's it from me. Do I have a seconder? Mayor would like to quiz me?
No, thank you for your advocacy work.
Let's put that one to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Councillor De Backer, I take it you'd like to move 11.2?
Yep, I'll move it to get it on the floor.
Yep, welcome to speak to it.
Yeah, so I read with great interest on page 158 8 is City Works and Presentation Report, and it was to do with the Green Tunnel update. So obviously, you know, having green canopy is always fantastic in the city of Prospect. But I note with interest, you know, we've got a drought going on, and certainly a demand requirement to water trees a bit more often when they're under stress. And trees also seek water when they're under stress. And I just wanted to highlight the fact that, you know, with our ITP and footpaths, we really need to get trees right. I know the City of Charles Sturt has a really good street tree selection policy, which is right tree, right place, and I'm happy to circulate that around to everyone. But if we note in page 175, there's a map there, and it also refers to hibiscus and tuckeroo have been selected specifically for verges under 500 mil due to smaller mature trunk size that will limit damage to adjoining road infrastructure in the future. So it's good to see that actually acknowledged in a council report, because, you know, for years we have been contacted by the community talking about the incorrect tree species planted in their verge, and it damages infrastructure and it costs our ratepayers. So it's good to see that action is happening, and I'm just wondering, is there a mind from the director to be looking at this retrospectively, that perhaps where we've planted the incorrect species and things can be phased in where they're incorrectly planted? Through the chair.
Take that as a question, CEO.
So the suggestion is we cut down trees that we've planted incorrectly, or remove trees that we've planted incorrectly and replace them with more appropriate species.
Where there is identified issues, and perhaps where there is roadworks to be done. We've done it before with cedar trees, and I know Councillor Nelson's brought up some trees in his area.
Where we've had some challenges with this in the past,
Yep.
and Mr. Delena, maybe you could take this one.
Through the chair, it's a very sensitive issue. In terms of removing mature trees, we did face this challenge, and we had conversations about Livingston Avenue, the most recent one, and that was effectively the Queensland boxes, and in that those conversations with members, we decided that we could retain the trees on the basis that we could, and that they add amenity to the street, and it takes 25 years to return that amenity. So we have looked at putting in some supplementary tree planting and effectively providing a replacement, de facto replacement program, and not replacing the Queensland boxes. So that's the approach that we're taking, Councillor Baker, that we are looking to supplement planting trees with more appropriate species, where we've determined that there is some inappropriate placement in the past. So that's under power lines in narrow verges. So effectively that is, and you've seen through this update and live examples where we've done that recently.
Like I said, it is good to have it acknowledged, and I think there are going to be instances where, and we've done it with white cedar, where we might just plant, you know, a couple of feet next to a different species that is perhaps going to replace species that are, you know, not suitable. And I think we don't have a policy position on that yet, but I think if we're looking to have areas where we have suitable pavements, footpaths, I always get pavements confused because that refers to roads, we need to consider placement of trees and tree species. Thank you for the movement in that area.
Thank you for moving the motion. Do I have a seconder for item 11.2? Not a motion, a report. Councillor Nelson would like to speak to it. If there's any further questions or points that haven't already been raised, now's the time. Otherwise, I will give the opportunity back to Councillor at the back of the sum up. Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Now, you, Councillor Nelson, have pulled out 11.3.
I believe it was.
Yeah, would you like to move and speak to the motion?
Absolutely, I would, yes. I think most people would be aware that this lease licensing policy has been my little love child since I joined council, and it's great to see it progressing at 100 mile an hour, which is good. I fully support everything that's happening. I do just have 3 questions, if I may, though. So I do note the new licence for Blair Athol Tennis Club is in its final draft. Just wondering, through the chair, what access is going to be given to the community to the tennis courts while we're undertaking that? Obviously, at the moment, it has one padlock, and the Blair Athol Tennis Club holds the key. they're not allowing the community in. We're going to have the Booker Court system in there when we do the upgrades. What activities through this new lease is going to be available to the community?
So anyway, Mrs. Elena, given that we just signed the lease yesterday or today,
so the question through the chair, Councillor Nelson, is what access will the community have to the courts once the full court system is in place?
So now, what access they have now until the booking court system goes into place. If Blair Athletics Club has now signed a new lease where they have to give the public access, what access do the public have now? Because Matthews Reserve might not happen for another couple of years. So what access do the public have now?
So, the correct answer to that is as per their current arrangements through the club itself. Matthews Reserve is budgeted for next financial year in its entirety to be developed. The lease has an obligation on the club to effectively become an affiliated member of Tennis Australia, Tennis SA, sorry. To facilitate that, it is the existing arrangement until such time.
So the public still has no access to those courts?
Coming to replace access, but through walking through the process.
That's a bit disturbing because I mean we did have a fairly firm policy of the council that all new leases must provide community access. So and if that's made up part of the new lease, then they should be told they need to give the public access when they're not using. They're only using it for 4 or 5 hours a week.
For the men, obviously challenges with respect to accessibility of existing courts, and in terms of the Matthews Reserve project will replace all the fences and make these courts accessible in terms of all members of the public and implement the infrastructure with the way to be able to do that. So that's the challenge we had with the existing infrastructure. And the real intent and what has been built into the actual lease itself, that there will be all 3 courts will be returned to the public outside the club's use on Tuesdays and Saturdays only, outside those times. And there's times of use that have been embedded in there from the club's perspective. So effectively 5 of the 7 days they'll be open to the public, and from 8 AM to dusk.
So maybe just table for future one. I was talking to Martin Richards on the weekend from Broadview. They have an electronic padlock, which is not that expensive, that we could put on there now and allow community access. So I'll table that for a future motion. Second question is, now that we have Prospect and Broadview Tennis Clubs have their new leases, I did see in the report that they, and quoting page 165, Prospect and Broadview Tennis Clubs offer automated service for the hiring of the courts between the rates of $10 and $20 per hour for casual court hire by non-members. Just wondering where that money goes. Does that go to council or does that go to the clubs?
Mr. One.
Through the chair, just like to make council this place of Prospect Tennis Club and
Prospect Tennis Club and Broadview Tennis Club. Once now that they have the Booker Court system in there and they have new leases, and the community access is provided, does if the public's paying $10 to $20 per hour, does that go to the club or does that go to council?
Free times.
There's no free times according to the report.
Yeah, there's meant to be 3 times.
Prospect and Broadview, the report states that Blair Rathel there is free, but for Prospect and Broadview Tennis Club it says that there's an automated service at an affordable community rate between $10 and $20 per hour.
And Mrs. Elena.
through the chair, with respect to the Prospect Tennis Club, there is a courts, as per lease signed, court 5 and 8 are free to the public between 8 and 3 outside of club use, which is effectively Monday to Friday, and I believe I have to confirm on the weekend, but effectively in that this week we flood this court to cancel 5 times. So it is free, courts 5 to 8 for a significant portion of the week. Members of the public, Broadview have their Booker Court system, which can be booked. It's not free at this point, but that's something that we would pick up through the redevelopment of the facility.
Thank you. And my last one, just out of curiosity, obviously having a look at the report, there's a lot of data on things like even the Miniature Stream Railway. Have we got any upcoming meetings to discuss the community value in that and what further value we can get out of that facility?
We've yet to put a meeting in the workshop agenda, but we have definite plans to get one going in the next 6 months. We haven't gotten there yet though. We haven't actually scheduled one, but it's, yes, we want to do that.
Thank you for moving that, Councillor Nelson. If there's nothing further, I'll call for seconder. Deputy Mayor Nguyen would like to speak to the report.
Yeah, it's great to see, this is obviously very new to us and see all this information. It'll be great to keep, track of this over the next few years and have, the stats and the conditions of the facilities.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Any points that haven't already been covered? If not, I'll head back to Councillor Nelson to Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Item 12, general business. 12.1. Thank you to Councillor Nelson and Tobacco Barnett for your reports and or briefings. Motions on notice nil. Questions with notice nil. Urgent motions without notice. There are none. Late reports. 13. Confidential items nil. Brings us to meeting closed at 8:44. Thank you, everybody.